The car showroom was buzzing with activity. Shiny new models gleamed under the bright lights, and customers, dressed in expensive suits and designer dresses, wandered around admiring the luxury vehicles. Behind the sleek counters, the sales team stayed alert, eager to attend to anyone who showed the slightest interest in buying. At the center of all the action was the showroom manager, Henry, a middle-aged man with neatly combed hair and a stern expression that rarely softened. Henry ran the place with strict rules and a sharp eye for detail. He prided himself on keeping the showroom's image flawless, catering to a wealthy clientele who expected nothing but the best. It was around midday when a woman walked in. She was alone, wearing a simple dark blue dress with a pair of worn-out shoes. Her skin was a rich, deep brown, and she carried a small handbag slung over her shoulder. Despite the simplicity of her attire, there was something graceful about the way she moved, as though she belonged wherever she went. Her eyes lit up when she saw a sleek black sedan on display, and she approached it, admiring the smooth curves and shiny finish. Henry, who had been speaking to a customer, noticed her immediately. He frowned, his eyes narrowing as he observed her closely. Something about her appearance didn't fit the usual profile of his customers. She didn't look like someone who could afford even the smallest model on display, let alone the luxury sedan she was admiring. Without wasting another moment, Henry excused himself from the conversation and walked briskly toward the woman. His polished shoes clicked loudly on the marble floor, drawing attention from a few nearby salespeople. "Excuse me, ma'am," Henry said, his tone cold and formal. "Can I help you with something?" The woman turned around, startled by the abruptness of his approach. She gave him a polite smile. "Oh, I was just looking at this car. It's beautiful." Henry didn't return her smile. Instead, he glanced around, noticing how some customers had started to glance in their direction. He didn't like it. In his mind, her presence was a distraction, something that could ruin the showroom's image. "These cars," he said slowly, as if speaking to a child, "are very expensive. I don't think this is the right place for you." The woman blinked, clearly taken aback. "Excuse me," she asked, her voice calm but firm. "Are you saying I can't be here?" Henry crossed his arms. "I'm saying that unless you're here to make a serious purchase, it would be best if you left. We don't allow people to loiter around." A hush fell over the immediate area as a few customers and employees stopped what they were doing, sensing the tension. The woman stood her ground, her expression unchanging, though there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Disappointment, perhaps, or frustration. "I didn't realize admiring a car counted as loitering," she said quietly, "and I don't appreciate being treated this way." Henry shrugged, unaffected by her words. "We have to maintain a certain atmosphere here, ma'am. If you're not a potential buyer, I kindly ask you to leave." One of the younger salesmen, Mark, had been watching the scene unfold from behind the counter. He felt a growing sense of unease. It wasn't the first time he had seen Henry act this way, but something about this particular incident felt different. He knew he had to do something, even if it meant going against his manager. Steeling himself, Mark stepped forward. "Sir, maybe I can help the lady?" he offered, trying to keep his voice neutral. Henry shot him a sharp glare. "No need, Mark. I've got it under control." But Mark didn't back down. "With all due respect, sir, I think she has every right to be here. We don't usually ask people to leave unless they're causing a disturbance, and she's clearly not." Henry's face turned red with anger, but before he could say anything, the woman spoke again. "It's fine," she said, addressing Mark with a grateful nod. "I don't want to cause any trouble. I'll leave." She turned to walk away, but just as she reached the door, an elderly man who had been watching the entire scene from afar stepped forward. His name was Mr. Thompson, a regular customer who had bought several cars from the showroom over the years. He was well respected in the community and known for his fair-minded nature. "Wait a moment, young lady," Mr. Thompson said, his voice loud enough to draw everyone's attention. He looked directly at Henry, his expression stern. "Is this how you treat potential customers here?" Henry opened his mouth to respond, but Mr. Thompson didn't give him the chance. "I've been coming to this showroom for years, and I've spent more money here than I care to admit. But if this is how you treat people based on how they look, then perhaps I've been giving my business to the wrong place." Henry paled. He knew how important Mr. Thompson's patronage was to the showroom. Losing a customer like him would not go unnoticed by the higher-ups. Mr. Thompson, I assure you, that's not what this was about, Henry said hastily. I was just trying to ensure. You were trying to ensure that only people who meet your personal standards are allowed to browse, Mr. Thompson interrupted. That's not how business works, Henry. And frankly, it's disgraceful. The woman who had paused by the door turned back slowly. She met Mr. Thompson's eyes and gave him a small, appreciative smile. Thank you, she said softly. Mr. Thompson nodded before turning back to Henry. I suggest you apologize to this lady, and perhaps it's time you reconsidered how you judge people. Henry hesitated, clearly struggling with his pride, but the weight of everyone's eyes on him, combined with the potential fallout from Mr. Thompson's words, left him little choice. I apologize, he said stiffly, his gaze fixed on the floor. I shouldn't have assumed anything about you. The woman studied him for a moment, then gave a polite nod. Thank you, she said simply. Mark stepped forward again. Ma'am, if you're still interested, I'd be happy to show you around. She hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Together they walked back towards the cars, leaving Henry standing awkwardly in the middle of the showroom, feeling the sting of his own actions. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson approached Henry one last time. Remember, Henry, he said quietly, respect is the foundation of any successful business. Without it, you have nothing. Henry didn't respond. He simply watched as Mark and the woman moved through the showroom, a growing sense of regret gnawing at him. As Mark guided the woman around the showroom, a quiet sense of respect filled the air. Despite the earlier tension, she carried herself with calm dignity, asking thoughtful questions about the cars and their features. Mark noticed her genuine interest in the engineering and design behind each model, something rare among many customers who only cared about appearances. This one is our latest model, Mark said, pointing to a sleek silver sedan. It has advanced safety features, top-notch fuel efficiency, and a luxurious interior. The woman nodded, running her fingers lightly along the smooth surface of the car. It's beautiful. I've always been fascinated by how much thought goes into designing these machines. Mark smiled. You seem to know a lot about cars. My father used to work in an auto repair shop, she explained, her voice warm with nostalgia. I grew up around engines and tools. He always dreamed of owning a car like this, but we couldn't afford one. Mark could see the emotion in her eyes and felt a pang of empathy. He realized that, unlike most customers who were drawn by status symbols, she had a deeper connection to cars, one rooted in memories and dreams. As they continued walking, other employees watched curiously, whispering among themselves. Some admired Mark's courage for standing up to Henry, while others were wary of the consequences. Henry, meanwhile, stood in a corner, brooding silently. He was well aware that word of this incident could spread quickly, potentially damaging his reputation. But things were about to take a surprising turn. Just as they reached the final section of the showroom, a tall man in a formal suit entered. He carried an air of authority, and his sharp eyes scanned the room before settling on the woman. With a wide smile, he walked towards her. Emily, there you are, he said warmly. She turned, surprised. Oh, Mr. Carter, I didn't expect to see you here. Mr. Carter, the CEO of a well-known tech company, extended his hand. I heard you were looking for a car, so I thought I'd join you. After all, I wouldn't be where I am today without your brilliant ideas. The entire showroom went silent. Employees exchanged stunned glances, and Henry's eyes widened in disbelief. This woman whom he had so rudely dismissed was apparently someone important. Important enough to have caught the attention of a powerful CEO. Henry felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He could already see how this situation might play out if Mr. Carter learned about what had just happened. Emily is one of the best engineers I've ever worked with, Mr. Carter continued, unaware of the tension. She developed a revolutionary algorithm that boosted our company's production efficiency by 30%. Without her, we wouldn't have achieved half of what we did last year. Mark, though equally surprised, managed to keep his composure. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Carter, he said politely. Emily was just looking at our latest models. Mr. Carter nodded approvingly. Good. She deserves nothing but the best. Emily, pick whichever car you like. Consider it my gift. Emily blinked, caught off guard by the generous offer. Mr. Carter, that's too much. I can't. Nonsense, he interrupted with a chuckle. You've earned it. Besides, it's about time you drove something that reflects your brilliance. Henry, desperate to salvage the situation, approached cautiously. Mr. Carter, welcome to our showroom. I didn't realize you knew Miss Emily personally. Mr. Carter's friendly demeanor shifted slightly as he picked up on Henry's nervous tone. He glanced at Emily, who remained silent, her expression unreadable. Is there something I should know? Mr. Carter asked, his voice cool. Mark hesitated, unsure whether to speak up, but Emily, sensing the tension, decided to handle it herself. It's nothing, she said calmly, giving Henry a pointed look. Just a misunderstanding. Mark here was kind enough to help me. Mr. Carter studied her for a moment before nodding. All right, but if there's ever an issue, don't hesitate to call me. Henry, feeling a mix of relief and dread, forced a smile. Of course, we're always happy to assist our valued customers. Emily turned to Mark, offering him a warm smile. Thank you for your kindness. You treated me with respect when it mattered most. Mark felt a rush of pride. It was the right thing to do. Before leaving, Mr. Carter handed Mark his business card. You have a good heart, young man. If you ever want a change in career, give me a call. Mark took the card, stunned by the unexpected offer. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. As Emily and Mr. Carter walked out together, the tension in the showroom slowly eased. Employees whispered excitedly about what had just happened, while Henry remained frozen in place, his mind racing with regret and shame. Mark returned to his post, feeling a mix of satisfaction and disbelief. He had stood up for what was right, and it had paid off in ways he hadn't imagined. But little did he know, this was just the beginning of the change that was about to unfold in the showroom. The incident spread like wildfire. Within hours, several employees had shared the story online, framing Mark as a hero who had stood up against discrimination. The post went viral, drawing massive attention on social media. People from all walks of life praised Mark for his courage and condemned Henry's behavior. The hashtag #respect for all began trending, sparking debates about prejudice in everyday life. Mark, however, remained humble. He didn't feel like a hero. In his mind, he had simply done what anyone should do, treat people with dignity, regardless of their background. But the overwhelming response made him realize something deeper. People were hungry for stories of kindness, respect, and change. The next morning, Mark arrived at the showroom to find reporters outside, eager to interview him. He hesitated, unsure if he wanted that kind of attention. Just then Emily appeared, offering him a reassuring smile. You handled things well yesterday, she said. I don't know if anyone told you, but what you did mattered more than you think. I just did what felt right, Mark replied modestly. Emily nodded. And that's why it mattered. You didn't do it for praise. You did it because you believed in it. As they spoke, Henry emerged from the showroom, his usual arrogant demeanor replaced by something more subdued. He approached Mark and Emily, clearly uncomfortable. I wanted to apologize, Henry said, his voice hesitant. I made a mistake yesterday. I shouldn't have acted that way. Mark could see the discomfort in Henry's eyes. For the first time, he looked less like a controlling manager and more like a man grappling with his own flaws. Though Mark didn't fully trust Henry's sincerity, he knew that forgiveness was more about letting go than holding on. I appreciate the apology, Mark said calmly. But it's not me you need to make things right with. It's the people you look down on. Henry's face flushed with embarrassment, but he nodded. You're right. I'll work on that. As Henry walked away, Emily turned to Mark. That's the hardest part, isn't it? Convincing people to see beyond their prejudices. Mark sighed. Yeah, but if yesterday taught me anything, it's that standing up can create ripples. Maybe this will make people think twice before judging someone by their appearance. Over the next few weeks, the story continued to gain traction. The showroom's management, keen to repair their damaged image, announced new diversity training programs for all employees. They also promoted Mark, recognizing his integrity and leadership. Emily, meanwhile, used the platform to raise awareness about workplace discrimination. She partnered with various organizations, speaking at events and sharing her experiences. Through her efforts, she hoped to inspire change on a larger scale. One afternoon, Mark received a call from Mr. Carter. I heard about the promotion. Congratulations. You deserved it. Thank you, sir, Mark replied, grateful for the support. I'm just glad things are heading in a better direction. They are, Mr. Carter agreed. But remember, it starts with people like you. Standing up when it's hard, speaking out when it's uncomfortable. That's how real change happens. Mark hung up, feeling both proud and reflective. He had always believed in doing the right thing, but this experience had shown him the power of small actions. A single moment of courage could inspire countless others to rethink their choices, challenge their biases, and strive for a kinder world. A few months later, the showroom had transformed. Employees worked in a more respectful environment, and customers of all backgrounds felt welcome. Henry, though still a work in progress, showed noticeable improvement in his attitude. One day, Emily visited the showroom again, this time driving the car Mr. Carter had gifted her. She parked outside and stepped in, greeting Mark warmly. "Thought I'd drop by and see how things are going," she said cheerfully. Mark smiled. "Things are definitely better." "I'm glad to hear that," she replied. "But remember, the fight against prejudice never really ends. It's something we have to keep working on." Mark nodded. "Yeah, but at least now, I know that even small actions can make a big difference." As Emily left, Mark reflected on everything that had happened. He hadn't set out to be a hero or to change the world. He had simply stood up for what was right. And in doing so, he had learned a valuable lesson. Your actions, no matter how small, define the world around you. When you choose kindness, courage, and respect, you create ripples that can lead to a better future for everyone. With that thought in mind, Mark returned to his work, knowing that the journey didn't end here. There would always be more moments to stand up, more opportunities to inspire, and more reasons to believe in a kinder world.